as fine dust results in social costs of up to 12 trillion won annually and becomes a problem severe enough to be categorized as a social disaster. TVs, newspapers, and the internet outlets are now covering the issue of fine dust. Fine dust is divided into two types. The primarily generated fine dust is directly emitted from factories, construction sites, and cars. The secondarily generated fine dust is granulated after being generated as gas from thermoelectric power plants, car emissions, factories, and nature. More than 70% of the amount of fine dust generation in Korea is secondarily generated fine dust. Long-term consistent exposure to fine dust, 10 micrometers or smaller in diameter, can raise the risk of asthma and lung diseases. It is also necessary to remove ultrafine particles, 2.5 micrometers or smaller in diameter, which are defined as Class 1 carcinogens and precursors in the air so as not to be inhaled into the body. Therefore, in addition to reducing the emission sources, which is currently being attempted by the government as a countermeasure against fine dust, it is also imperative to reduce precursors, substances causing secondarily generated fine dust, floating in the air. We propose a solution to fine dust that can remove many of the emitted precursors, substances causing secondarily generated fine dust, just by replacing previous construction materials by functional atmosphere purifying construction materials without requiring additional space. Atmosphere purifying construction materials are widely applied to the architectural field of the infrastructure of a city, including roads, sidewalks, long underground tunnels, and street facilities in a city, and interior and exterior materials of a building, and directly remove substances that cause secondarily generated fine dust. Eliminating car emissions, which are the main cause of fine dust, as soon as they are emitted is most effective to combat the issue. Atmosphere purifying construction materials are safe to the human body and the environment since they ionize nitrogen oxide created from emissions, so they are not emitted into the air again, as the strongly ionic bonds with calcium are contained a lot in cement and flow into a river with rainwater. Furthermore, atmosphere purifying construction materials applied to roadside paving blocks with many floating populations can prevent nitrogen oxide and sulfur oxide emitted from cars from being transformed into fine dust. And fine dust collecting facilities installed in roadside street lamps directly absorb and remove fine dust. High levels of exhaust fumes emitted when cars start are very harmful to humans. Making atmosphere purifying bus stops as fine dust-free spaces can decrease high-level damage to the human body. They can be also used as temporary shelters on days with very high levels. And large fine dust collecting towers installed in squares and parks in a city can directly absorb and remove polluted air in highly populated areas. Functional atmosphere purifying soundproof walls effectively and immediately remove nitrogen oxide emitted from cars so that it does not float into residential spaces. In long underground tunnels in a city, high levels of exhaust fumes are generated due to the characteristic of enclosed tunnels. If those exhaust fumes are discharged above ground, they can cause serious air pollution. By installing atmosphere purifying linings inside underground tunnels and increasing their effects with UV lamps, nitrogen oxide and sulfur oxide can be removed, and a pleasant atmosphere can be created. If atmosphere purifying construction materials are applied to buildings and residential facilities, such as apartment complexes, the buildings themselves become cleaners purifying a city. Atmosphere purifying outer wall finishing materials purify the air around a building by removing fine dust precursors widely spread in the air. Atmosphere purifying paints used for finishing the outer walls of apartments remove fine dust precursors, so apartment buildings with concentrated population become complex-style city cleaners. The indoor air quality is also important. Nano-photocatalytic filters applied to indoor air conditioning equipment can remove VOC and sterilize, always maintaining the indoor air clean and safe. Also, by applying air-purifying interior materials with excellent sterilizing power, it can remove various substances that cause sick house syndrome and maintain the quality of air indoors that is safe. With these methods, atmosphere purifying construction materials are being used as new environment purifying technology that can be applied across the city. Now, roads, sidewalks, and buildings become the woods in the center of a city. We will continue to strive towards clear skies in Korea.